Well, first up, Amit, when it comes to three Indian seafarers that turn into a collateral as far as the U.S. strikes on Iran is now concerned, India has now raised the protest to the highest levels. As the External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, has now posted saying that he spoke with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and has launched a strong diplomatic protest with the United States after the latter's Navy strike that happened on an oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman that killed Indian sailors, 3 of them. 21 of them were rescued, and in the last 4 days, 3 such incidents have now taken place. Now, while the External Affairs Minister was speaking to his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio, who recently was also here in India, he said that such lethal actions against commercial shipping is not justified. Now, on 2 occasions as well, India has summoned the U.S. diplomat to the Ministry of External Affairs with the strong protest that has been lodged with the US CDA regarding the continuing attacks by the United States naval forces on commercial vessels that are carrying Indian sailors in the Gulf of Oman, which have already resulted in the tragic loss of 3 Indian lives. The MEA has come out in a statement saying that it has conveyed its deep concerns over the use of lethal and deadly force against civilian shipping, adding that such actions are unacceptable, and they also undermine the safety, security and the stability of international maritime commerce in a sensitive region at a very difficult time. So the US's CDA, who was requested to convey India's strong concerns to his authorities and to ensure that the US forces operating in the region take all necessary measures to prevent the loss of civilian lives. So let's take a look exactly what the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has said. So in a post on social media platform X, EAM says, and I quote, that spoke to the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio this evening, and I reiterated India's strong protest at the attacks by the U.S. Navy in the Gulf that killed 3 Indian mariners, and such lethal actions against commercial shipping are not justified. So let's tell you exactly what has transpired in the Gulf of Oman amid renewed attacks by Iran and the US. Now, US strikes have killed Indian sailors, 3 of them, and we are looking at the MT Settebello that was attacked on the 8th of June. The location is said to be on the Gulf of Oman. There were 24 Indian crew members, out of them 21 were rescued. Then the other attack happened on the 9th of June, and this again is the same location at the Gulf of Oman, and here 3 sailors were killed, 21 of them who were rescued. Then comes MT Jalveer, and again this came under attack on the 11th of June, and this is near the Oman port, and all 20 crew members, however, were rescued. Meanwhile, India, which has summoned Washington's charge d'affaires or the CAD to New Delhi, in fact, to lodge a very strong protest over the attack, but Times has also learned some crucial details. Top sources which have now revealed that the Indian sailors were killed were not on Indian flagged ships. Now, Indian seafarers who were part of the shadow fleet which had come under the scrutiny of the US Navy, and the vessel apparently switched off its AI maritime tracking system that had raised a lot of suspicion. Let's connect with Srinjoy on this. Srinjoy, now this is on the highest levels that India is lodging protest as far as losing 3 Indian sailors in the conflict zone.
As you rightly said, these were not Indian flagged ships. And yes, their communication system was shut off. But nevertheless, these 3 Indians who died, they were Indian citizens. They were Indian sailors. The other 21 who were rescued were also Indian citizens. And their ship was hit, and 3 Indians have died, which is why, regardless of, the flag of the ship and all that, regardless of all that, keeping in mind that 3 Indian sailors were killed, the U.S. envoy was called in not once but twice. Now, that doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very much at all. When an Indian sailor dies, or 3 Indian sailors die, and an American envoy, a senior American envoy, the CDA, is called in not once but twice. Now that's an important event, that's an important moment. So very clearly, India is very cross that 3 of its citizens were killed.
Absolutely, and this protest that has now been lodged with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio as well, because Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister, also had a conversation with him, where India has also lodged its protest, saying that such lethal actions against commercial shipping are not justified. This is what the MEA has to say.
When this particular attack happened on the ship Settebello, we lodged a strong protest with the American side. We called in the American CDA, and he was conveyed our deepest concerns on the ongoing incidents of attacks. These attacks came from the U.S. Navy that is stationed there. The 3 ships that have been involved in the incidents are foreign flagged. 2 of them are Palau flagged, and the 3rd one, which came under attack today, is Guinea flagged. So that is, they are not Indian-owned ships. They are all foreign flagged ships.
So foreign flag ship in which there were Indian seafarers on board as the crew that came under attack. At least 3 such incidents that has been reported from the conflict zone. India has summoned Washington's chargé d'affaires, as been mentioned by the MEA, to lodge this strong protest over the attack. But time's now accessing the crucial details, because this is something which has been highlighted, that the Indian sailors killed were not on Indian flag ships, and the Indian seafarers were reportedly part of the shadow fleet, which has come under the U.S. forces scrutiny. The vessel reportedly switched off its AI maritime tracking system as well, and it apparently did also not obey the rules that resulted in U.S. firing. And the naval blockade exists whether we like it or not, but as far as in a collateral, what we are getting to know, the 3 Indian seafarers unfortunately were killed. But there's another twist, because all of this, as far as these strikes that have been taking up, mainly when it comes to these commercial shipping, which are deemed to be shadow fleet on part of the U.S., President Trump is now shifting the blame. He has now shared his comment on the attack on the ships and blaming it on Iran, and saying that Iran totally rebuffed the drone attack against Indian ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz is completely unacceptable, and they better get their act together and fast. Now, this is coming in from the U.S. military, which has acknowledged striking and disabling at least 3 Indian crewed ships near the Gulf of Oman this week, and the U.S. forces that shared a video of Hellfire missiles hitting one of the ships. President Trump, however, insists that the attacks were carried out by the Iranian drones. However, this seems to be a bit of another contradiction coming in from what the president seems to be projecting, and however what his army has, however, been saying, because there are videos there that actually highlights that these attacks, these strikes were indeed carried out by the U.S. military. So can Srinjoy, President Trump blame Iran for drone strikes on the ships, foreign flag ships with that Indian seafarers on board?
First of all, as you rightly said, you used the word contradictory. Now, the U.S. Central Command, which is Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the U.S. Central Command says that it's done what it's done. Now President Trump says that no, it were the Iranians were responsible for it. So there, as you rightly said, is a clear contradiction.
Absolutely, because this is now coming in from President Trump himself, where he is shifting the blame on Iran, saying that Iran totally rebuffed the drone attack against Indian ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz. And according to him, it is completely unacceptable, and they better get their act together and fast. In the meantime, speaking of U.S. President's accusations against Iran regarding the vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, however, seems to be baseless, because the blame game that has now begun over this issue, because according to Iran, it is an attempt to divert public attention from the brutal fact that the U.S. attacked 3 Indian vessels in less than a week and killing 3 Indian innocent sailors. And this is something which Iran has come out to call it as pathetic. So Iran denying its role as far as these strikes are concerned. First of all, as a clarity, these were not Indian flagged vessels. They were foreign flagged vessels which had Indian crew members on board. And this is something as 3 incidents that have been reported in the conflict zone. And out of them, one of them that there has been unfortunate Indian casualties that has been reported. So Iran coming out to say that it is absolutely pathetic, Srinjoy, in the manner in which the President of the United States is shifting the blame on Iran.
These 2 countries There may be a ceasefire on, but they're still at loggerheads. And this is an opportunity Iran has got. Iran is now saying that, look here the Central Command says something, President Donald Trump says something, President Trump blames us. And isn't that pathetic? That is the Iranian position. So Iran making use of this contradiction and saying what it has to. Of course, these two countries currently are in a ceasefire. But what kind of ceasefire, however tenuous, all that remains. Regardless of the ceasefire, they are still at loggerheads, and they are taking every opportunity to take pot shots. Sure, they're not firing at each other most of the time, but if they can take a pot shot, they will.
Absolutely, because this something is an unfortunate development that has now happened with India also lodging a protest saying that this is completely unjustifiable and unacceptable. But Srinjoy, does it raise the question as to how and why these shadow fleets with several of, different nationalities, crew members on board have been taking that kind of risk to evade the U.S. naval blockade because they will come under the strikes, under the line of firing?
It's a choice they made. It's a decision they took. And they understood the risks when they went ahead with it. Now, whatever else you say, this is being called, quote unquote, shadow fleet. And these are ships which obviously gain enormously. Their ship owners gain enormously if they can evade the blockade and deliver the oil, deliver whatever, and pick up the oil and come back. So as a result, the gains are so enormous that they can or wish to run the risk. That's really the bottom line. If they successfully run this risk, and blockade runners historically have made huge profits if they have been successful. Historically. So this is the attempt by the shadow fleet to make as much money as they can under these circumstances. Because oil prices are very high, and if they can lift the oil and pull out of the Strait of Hormuz and deliver it to where they were going to, they make a killing. Because this really is something blockade runners have done since history, ever since blockade running became an issue.
Yes.
So as a result, you would imagine the profits would have been enormous if they had succeeded.
But this is a conflict zone that we are speaking of. I mean, Strait of Hormuz has literally now turned into a battlefield with these strikes that has now been launched. Several of the ships that wanted to pass through that narrow strait have been asked to also return by the United States. But however, nevertheless, it continues to remain as a conflict zone.